Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing for Thursday, the 6th of July. I'm Aidan Macdonald and today I'm joined by Ryan McGinlay. Ryan, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Good morning. How are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Obviously, plenty to speak about today. In general, some transfer stuff, some interesting news regarding the first Glasgow derby this season that I'm sure we'll come to. Obviously, just before we get started, for anybody that's interested, the ticker tape down below has the latest information. You can subscribe to the Celtic Way website, supporting top quality journalism for the club you all love. We obviously were recently running a subscription offer that did finish on Tuesday. So it's back to the normal deal, and as part of your subscription, you will get access to features such as the one Tony conducted with John Hartson, which is on the site today. Tactical pieces of people like Ryan, scouting pieces, data analysis, opinions, people like Kevin McKenna. So to get yourself involved in that, you can go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. So to kick us off, obviously, it's emerged reports sort of yesterday through last night and this morning that there's been a sort of fee involved, or we know what the fee will be for Hyun-jun moving to Celtic. It is, according to reports, going to be up to 2.1 million. It appears that sort of he's on the verge of a move if these reports are to be believed. The player had obviously previously offered to play his own salary at the club, which we were having a wee joke about recently about how I didn't think that was really practical. It didn't usually happen in football, but it seems to have moved on a wee bit. Obviously, originally we did have some scouting up on him, and I know you've seen a few clips, etc. Would you be excited if it was a player that was to come in?
Obviously, you look at the opposition that he's playing against. That isn't the best league. You see that even through the 2-minute clip that I watched last night that was going viral on social media. It seemed the opposition he's playing against isn't great, but he does look head and shoulders above everybody else when he is shown in those clips. He's beating players with ease. He reminds me a wee bit of Jota, the way he just beats people. Step overs and stuff like that. He knows where the goal is. I know he's not had the greatest of seasons statistics wise, but that's his whole team's been the same. He's probably one of the main reasons why his team is where they are, is because he's not having a good season. It's one of those ones where if the scouting is right and the scouting's spot on, and he looks a good player that can be developed at the age of 21, then I'm all for it. Marco Tellio will be coming in the right wing as well. That's where Yang plays. So the two of them will be fighting it out. Two 21-year-olds plus Abada if he stays, which I've got to be honest, I doubt if we're bringing in two right wingers. I think we'll see him maybe go somewhere else this summer. But if you have two number 21s, two right wingers who are 21 years old, who are desperate for some first team action, who have first team action already, they've got that experience. That this is another thing. It shows that the transfer policy is working, because we're not just signing players that have no experience. I know we might do that with regards to a left winger if we do go for our maybe number one target, or the target that the fans seem to want. But it seems as in all of our signings so far, or two of our signings and a reported signing that's close to being finalised, they've all got first team experience. They've all played, but they're still a good young age. So it means that they're experienced, but they've still got scope and room to improve. So yeah, it's one of those ones where I'd be quite happy if it went through. I wasn't too impressed with the way he's handled not getting his move, but as long as he doesn't repeat that behaviour when he's at Celtic, then I'll be all for it. And if he's repeating that behaviour, then it means he's done quite well at the club, because there'll be other clubs that are interested down the road. So swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there is sort of different angles to take with his perception. There is always, I think, some things maybe lost in translation potentially, but the sort of thing about his wages, he was happy to pay, does seem like that was the case. That he did say that. That was never going to happen, I don't think, in modern football, the way contracts and all that work. But he seems like a talented player. I just posted in the sort of comments there, Stuart Ross's scouting report he did on Yang recently. I think it was last week, I believe. At the beginning of last week. It's pretty detailed. I think he thought he could make an impact, but it might not necessarily be somebody who's going to be starting in the first team straight away. Maybe, I know the sort of phrase project sign gets thrown about quite a lot, and sometimes that can be a wee bit derogatory, but I think he is probably in that bracket in terms of someone who could come in and adapt. Well, it doesn't mean he wouldn't come in and make an impact. Or Abada was probably viewed as a project signing when he first joined, and that first season obviously scored was 16 goals or something. So he could make an impact, but it looks like he could be somebody to try and develop the squad. There is a few sort of quotes to go along with this story. The Gangwon CEO, which is obviously the team he plays for, said in the report that came out revealing that the sort of transfer moves had been given the green light. He said, "I've met with Yang. I still believe in the skills he has. However, we have to consider the impact of our current situation, the fact being, as you mentioned, Ryan, that they're near the bottom of the league, on the player himself. This is a positive message. A contract is only possible when the details are negotiated. No one knows what will happen in the middle of the process. However, both clubs and the players are reviewing it positively." And this was kind of on the back of a previous report, which I think it was involving the original one when he was talking about paying his wages. The CEO had said that he'd met with Yang and had a candid conversation. We decided to completely review the policy of no summer transfers. This was a misunderstanding between the players and the club, and this has been resolved. Now they say they have come to the conclusion that we should do our best in each position while respecting each other. A full review means that we've decided to positively consider Celtic's proposal. So obviously, when you look into the report a wee bit more, it has moved on since those comments. At some point, it did seem like they went from "no, you're not going" to "we'll maybe see," and now it seems that a sort of fee's been agreed or been bookmarked anyway for what we would pay if he was to come to Celtic. Once again, it seems to be they're getting, if he does come in, relatively soon, the business will be getting done all in the window, Ryan, which I think we've kind of became used to over the last few years under Ange. It's good to see it seems to be continuing under Brendan Rodgers as well.
Yeah, I think with regards to this pattern that seems to have emerged, a positive pattern with regards to signing players before a position is needing, it's like it's necessary to fill up a position. If we bring the players in that are going to directly the players that are interested in moving away, or if there's other clubs that are interested in these players, then it's good because it means they're bedded in by the time those other players leave and they can just easily acclimatise themselves into the first team. With Yang, if he comes in, we've already got Marco Tilio, as I've spoke about, so it would be quite a good dynamic for the two of them to sort of fight it out for the right wing spot under Brendan Rodgers. That's good. That's a positive step for the team, I would say, having those options already to sort of alternate. They could be completely different players and suit different games. So I'm sure the both of them, the two of them, if Yang does sign, then he will get game time in the pre-season friendlies. It's a shame that he'll be coming in and then he won't be able to go to South Korea because we cancelled the friendly. I know there's been some rumours about that fixture still taking place elsewhere. It's just rumours at this point, but you know, it's still a position that we need to fill in terms of the pre-season calendar. But yeah, it seems as if Celtic have have everything in order with regards to people coming in before our assets leave, and the only one that I would say maybe goes against that is Jota. But even then, I think that one took them by surprise a wee bit, and they're working on bringing in somebody that's of that quality or similar to that quality to replace Jota. Because as Tony and I were speaking about yesterday, you still need to replace those goals and assists that Jota had, and they were in double digits both in goals and assists last season and the season before. So, yeah, I think it's okay when you're replacing Abada with maybe a project or two, because Abada himself still has a project. But with Jota, I think you need to bring in someone more established or somebody that's going to immediately hit the ground running with goals and assists. Because it's going to be difficult to replace that. Jota was such a match winner for us, so we need somebody on the left-hand side that can do something similar. I know they'll probably need to spend money to do that, but they've got the transfer budget to do so I would expect them to do that.
Agree, Ryan. I think that Jota, it probably will take a wee bit longer to replace him. It does seem that just the way everything kind of transpired, I know people have been maybe reading into the statement that Celtic put out, there was some saying it was a wee bit cold, etc. The fact that he's not, as far as I know, unless there was something put up through the night, he's not really addressed his own departure from Celtic yet. It does but seem to have went offline briefly here. Hello, Ryan, can you still hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you just now, mate. But your thingy's going on and off just now. I think you're all good now, though.
Yeah, you're the same for me. It could be a Wi-Fi issue on my end. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, obviously they knew that Jota was a very talented player, so bids were inevitable for him. But it does seem it's moved very quickly. So I think we can forgive the club of having to sort of wait for a wee bit longer before getting somebody in. Really, I think that doesn't need to be an immediate signing. Obviously, there's still a good chunk of time till the season begins. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be getting to the game against Ross County and then you're not able to have somebody in at the place shorter. That would be ridiculous, to be honest. And then fans would quite rightly complain. But the fact is that there's still just about a month, I believe, or just under a month till the season begins. So I think that's plenty of time to get somebody in, and we'll maybe go on to discuss. I know you guys touched on yesterday. We'll maybe going to discuss at a later date whether or not that's going to involve maybe Celtic breaking their transfer record, etc. But yeah, I have faith with the current recruitment system that they can replace Shota. I think it might just take a bit longer. And yeah, it can't be one of these sort of players that have already came in my opinion, that replaces somebody like that. It's got to be not even the most established name, but somebody with a wee bit more pedigree, I think, to replace Shota.
Yeah, and that's all down to the success that Jota brought to the team. Through his now, you've got to remember that Jota was a project player himself. Yes, I know he was coming from Benfica, but he'd hardly had a full season of football. His first season at Celtic was his first proper professional season, because he was in and out of the team at Real Valladolid when he was on loan from Benfica, obviously. So when he came in, he became an established senior player due to his time at Celtic, and these players at Celtic bring in, they'll become that as well due to game time that they play. But I just think, with regards to the supporters, I don't think like a project, like a £2-3 million project, would wash with the support, considering Celtic have just banked a £19 million profit on their player, or round about that fee. I know they got around about €30 million all in. So that, take away the add-ons, you're still getting a sizable fee. So you would expect some of that money to be reinvested in the first team squad, and especially at left wing. It's such an important position for us, for the club, because Jota was so involved in everything that was good with Celtic in an attacking sense. He scored goals, he assisted goals. He was also really good defensively in his second season. That's something that he really improved on. Probably makes him a more valuable asset for whatever team he's at now, that he can play that defensive side of the game too. So yeah, I think Celtic do need to splash the cash in that position. I don't think, as much as I do like El-Yunusi, I don't think a free transfer will make the Celtic fans too happy. I think you're going to need to spend 6, 7, 8 million on a ready-made replacement that is going to make an impact, both domestically and in the Champions League.
Yeah, I completely agree, Ryan, with all your points you've made there. On El-Yunusi, I think some fans anyway, I would include myself in this, would be happy to see him come back, but I don't think that could be seen as like a Jota replacement, just with the nature. I know he's very talented. El-Yunusi, he could add a lot to the team, I'm sure, but I think you would need to be, it doesn't even need to be like a significant outlay, but it's got to be somebody who, it's clearly there's been a bit of effort in terms of scouting. And I think, well, it would just maybe think some fans might look at it as like an easy option if he was to come back, which probably could be a bit harsh, because I think he's a good player, and I did want Celtic to sign him after that COVID season. He was sort of one of the few players that, particularly near the end, was still scoring goals and sort of putting in a decent return in terms of assists. I think he could offer a lot to Celtic, but it's got to be somebody with Jota. I think it will need to be a top signing, and I don't know exactly who that's going to be, to be honest, but we'll have to wait and see near the time. So if we just kind of move on from sort of transfers for now, obviously, Ryan, you'd highlighted this to me earlier on off air about recent stuff that's came out about the first Glasgow derby of the season. I believe it's the 4th or 5th game of the Scottish Premiership campaign. It's at Ibrox, obviously, 4th, yeah. And it looks like there's going to be some away fans back in there, doesn't
it? It depends, really. It depends if Celtic accept the offer, which, I think it's a bit derisory, 700. I mean, when I read the headlines coming out at Was it late last night? I thought, oh, Celtic might be getting a couple of thousand tickets here. Not 700, but it was painted as if it was this sort of great olive branch, 700 tickets. That's what Celtic got a few seasons ago. I just, for two clubs that obviously the rivalry is absolutely massive between Celtic and Rangers. Nothing can take that away. It's one of the biggest rivalries in Scottish. Well, it's definitely is the biggest rivalry in Scottish football. It's also one of the biggest rivalries in world football. Top 5, I would say, quite easily, just due to the passion that's in the fixture. But I mean, 700 tickets. Something has got to be done about this. The original, at least the European allocation should return a couple thousand. Because for the amount of chat that gets talked about how good the derby is, it's getting saturated due to a lack of fans being there on both sides, I would say as well. I think there should be Rangers fans at Celtic Park as well. As much as I've enjoyed the games in which Celtic beat Rangers 3 and 4-0 respectively, where there was no Rangers fans, I did enjoy the whole stadium being Celtic fans, but I think there needs to, in order for the rivalry to be kept there and the intensity of the game, I think both fans need to be represented. And I know there's safety concerns that go with that, obviously the policing and the stewarding of the games, but at the same time, we've got to get it back to what it was. It was a great spectacle, and I just feel that it's been completely saturated and watered down now. And the longer this sort of debate just gets kicked down the road, the worse it gets. To be honest, I want it to go back to the way it was, because we talk about bragging rights, and there is nothing better than the bragging rights at the end of a game. I just think it should go back to the way it was. I know that might be a controversial opinion. I know that people might prefer having only Celtic fans in the stadium, but I prefer it if both teams are represented.
There's obviously a lot of different opinions on this. It is quite a polarising topic for a variety of reasons, but Michael McDonald says Celtic will not take these tickets, staff. Will not take the tickets for various reasons. It was safety concerns that we refused the tickets last time. But that is obviously a factor. Going back to, I believe it was a 2-1 game in the 21-22 season, getting my years mixed up there, where I think it was a Celtic physio hit by a bottle. There was sort of bottles, etc. thrown on the pitch. After that, Celtic, even though I believe for the game, there was still a game after that where Celtic fans were at Ibrox. I think it was, the 2 each draw back in January. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the 2 games at the end of the campaign, there wasn't any away fans. And it's one of those ones. I think you and I have kind of discussed before that there might be a sort of compromise somewhere to be found in terms of a sort of European style allocation, where maybe, I don't know, 2,500, 3,000, sort of similar to what maybe Rangers gave to Liverpool or Dortmund, I think it was, in the Europa League. I remember that being discussed at the time, that was a sort of maybe style Celtic could go with Rangers, but it's whether or not that will happen, I don't know. I don't know if there's maybe too much bad blood now in terms of, not just in general, but in terms of the ticket situation. It's also been rumbling on for a while. I mean, the last game that Celtic had the full allocation at Ibrox was Brendan Rodgers' second season, wasn't it, when Edouard scored? And the last time Rangers had the full allocation at Parkhead was when Celtic won the league and beat Rangers 5-0. So it feels like it's been so long now that it could be difficult for it to go back to any sort of resolution. And I think we accept that it's never going to go back to what it was, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 a number. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there could be a compromise maybe in between there, but the safety concerns is valid. Mm-hmm. And that would probably be what Celtic will consider most. Obviously, it was kind of agreed for the last 2 derbies at the end of last season that there wouldn't be any away fans, and as far as we can see, it doesn't seem like a lot's changed, apart from, I know you discussed, it was the Rangers putting out the olive branch. It was a bit of a clickbait headline in that when you actually went into it and looked and seen that it was just going to be them offering.
Yeah, it got me for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you got a lot of people, to be fair. Yeah, we'll have to just keep an eye on it, and I imagine, given the game isn't that far away, once the season starts and the tickets are getting dished out, we'll find out very quickly whether or not Celtic take Rangers up on that. I think I probably do agree with you at the moment. The more I think about it, that I don't know if I can see Celtic taking that up. I think they would want to get a bit more, but there's going to need to be I don't know what sort of hold Sky would have over that, but I'm surprised that, given how much dominance they seem to have over other aspects of the Scottish game, that they've not asked for the allocations to be increased a wee bit. They've clearly shown that they can be facilitated. When I mentioned Rangers in those Champions League games, and Europa League games against Dortmund and then Liverpool, that they were able to sort of pack in whatever it was to that corner. I don't want to get my numbers wrong, but it was at least a couple of thousand anyway. They've been able to show that they can facilitate that. So maybe we'll see if there's a bit of progress. But obviously Tony and Sean and I discussed that quite in detail last year. Tony did a really good piece on it at the time, and we seemed to say that it was going to come to a standstill, really, because as we know, Rangers removed the tickets because basically Celtic were winning there all the time under Brendan Rodgers, whatever it was. I think it was four games in a row in the league. Brendan Rodgers won there, and that kind of they felt they could sort of remove the tickets, and it gave them some sort of advantage, even though really the only time they actually won the league was when there was no fans there. So I think we could debate whether or not it's actually added anything, but I was just one we'll have to keep an eye on, and you'd imagine that we'll hear some sort of statement about it, Ryan. Either way, whether it's Celtic, accepting it, the status quo changing, or Celtic saying no, we're not taking you up on it.
Yeah, I highly doubt that they're going to take it because they didn't take it beforehand. I'm sure the Celtic. It seems that out of the two clubs, that might have a biased view of this, but out of the two clubs, it seems as if Celtic wanted to change back to the way it was. Maybe not the full seven odd thousand, the full Broomloan stand, but something a bit bigger, because I mean that wee triangle of fans that penned in, it makes the fans a real easy target. I feel it's just the one wee bit out of the stadium that is different fans from the rest. With all the stewards that are around it, sometimes it looks as if there's more stewards than supporters because they're completely hemmed in. It is a sensitive topic because it's one that keeps on getting talked about. Everyone has their own opinion on it. Whether you're a Celtic fan, whether you're a Rangers fan, you're a fan of any other club, whether you're a broadcaster, everybody seems to have a different opinion on it. But I think for the good of the game and the good of the derby, now I know there's a lot of bad that goes with the derby, but one of the atmosphere that game generates, I think it's unlike anything else I've ever seen in football. I think you've got to get, and I know that both sides can be guilty of incidents happening, but I feel like this is what stewards are for. And if you can get a decent amount of Celtic fans, that European allocation, much like Liverpool got, much like who was the other team that they played in the Champions League? I'm trying to think. Liverpool, Napoli, and was it Ajax? Ajax get a fair few fans as well. If you could get it like that, then that would be absolutely ideal. Meet in the middle somewhere. You don't need to move all of your season ticket holders in order to accommodate it. Just make it more than the 700, because 700 just isn't good enough. And I think if an agreement can be made with the two clubs, if they can be if they can be civil on that sort of thing, then it works best for all parties. It works best for the broadcaster as well, because they'll be getting an undoubted better product if both fans are represented.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel there might be maybe too much bad blood on this particular topic now for there to be any sort of resolution, because it's at the time, I think a lot of people thought it'll just be that one season. I think it was the 18-19 campaign when it first began, and then it's obviously since then. There's obviously, I know there was the season with no fans, but there's been plenty of opportunity for both teams to get around the table. And like you say, it does seem like Celtic would. We don't know if either team would really want to return to like a full allocation, but it seems that Celtic would be more likely to want to do that, or at least facilitate a sort of middle ground. But it doesn't seem like that's really been a discussion that's been put forward so far, and it doesn't look like it's going to be anything that's really resolved anytime soon. And you make a good point, Ryan. Celtic didn't really want to take Rangers up on that at the end of last season, so it's unlikely anything's probably going to change in that department, really, unless they get offered more tickets. I think there's also another St. Partick Thistle got 3,500 for a cup game. I didn't know the exact numbers, but I know they got a decent sized allocation. So that's another maybe even more recent example in the Champions League games of being able to facilitate a bigger crowd. I understand there's a difference between Rangers and Celtic and Rangers v Partick Thistle, but if we're just talking about it from a fan number perspective, the fact that they're able to facilitate that has obviously been it shows they can. I know Rangers might make the argument that they've sold season tickets around about that area, but it wasn't an issue for years before when people had season tickets in that area, but it didn't include that match. Obviously, it was similar to the Lisbon Lions stand at Celtic Park, so it's been done before, but it is one we'll just have to keep an eye on, and I imagine there'll be sort of some mud-slugging back and forth over this between now and when the game happens in September, I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, September. It's just the start of September. I know that.
Yeah,
I would be
game, like you
guessing.
were saying earlier. So, just
Yeah.
a wee quick thing before we finished. Connor Hazard, any other transfer exit for Celtic? I don't think that's probably a surprise to anybody, but it seems that Plymouth have agreed a fee with him, according to reports. Obviously, he was on loan at HJK, Helsinki last year for their season, and I think he's been back at Celtic since January or so.
It has been,
He's sort of been spotted on the pitch a few times warming up and plenty of training stuff, but he's not really been involved. Obviously, it's had a bit of an interesting time at Celtic, probably to put it mildly. He went from not really being involved at all to Neil Lennon then saying he was his first choice goalie, to then throwing one in the net in the cup final, but to then saving the 2 penalties in the sort of 1920 Scottish Cup COVID final. So I guess you always have that on his CV. You always have the that competition, but I think overall, Ryan was maybe just somebody that it might sound a wee bit harsh, but just fell a bit below the standard of what Celtic were requiring for a goalkeeper.
Yeah, I thought he was. I didn't think he was too great in that final at all. I know he saved the penalties that won us the competition, but I think he was directly involved in 2 of the goals that Celtic conceded. One for sure, the one that you were talking about, but I'm sure he was directly involved in another one. That was a game that Celtic should have been so far out of sight, and then they allowed Hearts to get back into it. Got to the point where Josh Ginnelly, who is now at Swansea, obviously from Hearts, was absolutely tearing Celtic. Tearing them to shreds. His pace was just too much for them to handle. Connor Hazard, he had a really good loan spell at Helsinki. I think he won the league title. He was one of their players of the year over there. But yeah, it's one of those ones that I think he needs to move on for the benefit of his career. He needs to move on and for his international prospects as well, because he's in and around that Northern Ireland team. So in order to do so, he'll be playing, I know, Bailey Peacock Farrell, who I think he plays for Burnley. I don't know if he's on loan somewhere now. He might have moved somewhere different, but he's the number 1 at Northern Ireland. So he'll be playing around about the same sort of league system. I don't know exactly what league he plays in, but he'll be playing down in England, so there'll be more eyes on him, and there'll be more chances for Michael O'Neill to go down and watch him for that side. So I wish him all the best in his career. I just don't think he was necessarily good enough for Celtic. But a lot of players do tend to carve out good careers, even though they weren't good enough for Celtic. So it's one of those ones. You wish him well, you wish him all the best, but I think Celtic need to improve in that goalkeeping position anyway. The fact that we're losing a goalkeeper means somebody else needs to step into that number 3 or number 4 role.
Yeah, undoubtedly, and we've kind of discussed that probably to death at this point, but Celtic really need to be making a goalkeeper a priority in this window, and hopefully they are. Obviously, at the moment, it's just been forward players really that have been linked or came in, but it does feel like that it's going to have to be something that's addressed, and I think fans will be hoping that that's kind of one of the marquee positions that the club recruiting in this campaign. No harm to Joe Hart. I'm sure he'll be, if he wants to stay, of course, I'm sure he would be a very solid number 2 option, but I think we've seen his deficiencies near the end of last season. You obviously touched on in the office yesterday, Ryan, talking about the fact that the goal, or was it maybe another day, I think you were just talking about Curtis Main's performance against them, and how that basically did, even though we knew there was those issues there, that kind of put them in full show. How really, as much as Curtis Main does had a good season for St Mirren, it was probably a couple of goals that he could have been doing better with.
Yeah, I remember the second one especially, that Joe Hart's just planted to the spot, or he's rooted to the spot. And that was when I turned to my dad, who I go to the games with, and I said, I think Celtic need a new goalkeeper, because he's now making saves that I would have expected him to make a couple of years ago that he isn't now. I just feel like Celtic need to be pushing the boat out for a goalkeeper. I've written a piece that'll be out in the next couple of days talking about how that's just a quick preview to what's coming up on the website in the next couple of days. But I have spoke about the goalkeeping position in more detail. The fact that Celtic need to push the net out, or extend the net a wee bit, to see if they can get any good young goalkeepers on the continent. I think Joe Hart's been a great signing. Two really, really good years at Celtic. He's really stabilised the ship after a terrible season in which Connor Hazard was a part of it as well. Connor Hazard, Barkas and Scott Bain, they were all in this really weird roulette of goalkeepers.
Shivers down my spine, Ryan. Shivers down my spine.
It's a shivering prospect even thinking about that season, but we won't talk about that anymore. But the 3 goalkeepers getting used in the one season, that just shows that the team was all out of sorts. Everything was all up in the air. But yeah, Joe Hart, he could easily stay for a number 2 and be a really good backup, but I feel like Celtic need to really push the boat out, get a new young goalkeeper that eventually in a couple of years they can sell for profit. Because I think they need to be looking for a goalkeeper that can come in, do the business, and then a bigger or a richer team comes in and sells them. I think projects should be in goals as well. I don't think Celtic should be reluctant to put projects in goals if they are good enough to make that jump up to the first team.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would probably agree with that, Ryan. The general consensus is, Joe Hart's been a great servant for Celtic over the last couple of years. He'd be a solid number 2 that everybody would be happy to see. It would be happy to see if he did remain for another year. I think his mentality is all about playing football. It does feel that he would maybe want to move on if he was told he wasn't going to be number 1. I could be wrong, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard. But I think we will leave it there for today, guys. Ryan, sorry, is there something?
Sorry, I just before we finish, just a wee quick thing about yesterday about the Celtic TV, that clip that came out with Matt O'Reilly. I thought it was thought it was really interesting comments from Matt O'Reilly. Now I know Ange Postecoglou 3 or 4 times said that he didn't really have personal relationships with players, but I think just judging by Matt O'Reilly's comments yesterday, you can see that Brendan Rodgers is going to be the polar opposite to Ange Postecoglou. You seen it in the opening clips when he was meeting the players. I think he was complimenting Matt O'Reilly's beard, saying that he suits having a beard and grabbing his face and stuff. He's a more personal manager. We all know how much of a man manager Brendan Rodgers is, and with Matt O'Reilly saying that he's not reluctant to go and sit with the players at lunch. I think a lot of players, you'll have some players that maybe don't like having a relationship with the manager, but you'll find that a lot of players do. A lot of players do need that sort of, not a father figure, but somebody to look up to in terms of the manager. They might have done that. They might have done that with Postecoglou in a different way, but they know that Brendan Rodgers is going to be far more approachable than his predecessor. And I just think we heard some comments last season about Matt O'Reilly maybe struggling to deal with the mental side of playing with Celtic. I feel like having a guy like Brendan Rodgers that can just put his arm around his shoulder and basically G him up and tell him how good a player he is, because every Celtic fan knows how good Matt O'Reilly is, and he can be. The numbers don't lie. The numbers both statistically and in terms of his goals and his assists and his metrics on StatsBomb, etc., tell you that he's a really good rounded attacking midfielder. So having that guy that can put his arm around Matt O'Reilly's shoulder, tell him he's a good player, and just G him up for every game, I think we're going to see the best of Matt O'Reilly next season if he stays at the club.
Yeah, hopefully, Ryan. Hopefully, his comments were interesting. I know there was a lot of. I know you put out a tweet about it, and it was getting quite a bit of traction. And mate, what there was always, you're right, there was that stuff last year, saying that O'Reilly was maybe struggling a bit mentally with just everything that came with playing with Celtic. I don't think that affected his performances on the pitch too much. I know he was getting a bit of criticism last season, but as you pointed out, his metrics were very strong. And all right, I know he went a long time without scoring a goal, but he did play, was it something like 16, 17, 18 games in that number 6 role when Callum McGregor was out, which is not really a position that you see a lot of goals coming from, really. I mean, Callum McGregor didn't score tons of goals in the season just past, did he? So I think people need to take that into account. And his assist numbers were still excellent. His assist
14.
His assist statistics, I should say, were very strong. So he's one of the most creative players in the team, and a couple of goals that he did score were absolute belters when he finally did find his shooting boots. So yeah, if he can get even better under Brendan Rodgers, it's going to be a scary prospect for teams next season. A very good asset for Celtic.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Hopefully in Europe and the Champions League. In terms of the difference in management styles, we know probably Rodgers is a bit more hands-on with the players, I guess is maybe a way to describe it. We'd seen that before in his first spell, and a lot you can see plenty of interviews. You can go back and see stuff that James Maddison was talking about him on Soccer AM, I think it was, when he first joined, saying that the manager loved to sit and speak to them outside of training sessions. And the only thing I would say about that is, even though Andrew's maybe a wee bit more standoffish, it was obviously still an effective method of working, because he was very successful at Celtic. So I don't think it instantly means that Brendan Rodgers is going to be a more successful manager than Ange Postecoglou. I mean, I hope he does very well at Celtic, but we'll just need to wait and see in that. But obviously some players will be more comfortable with this style. Maybe O'Reilly's came through it when he was at Fulham, when he was at MK Dons. It was managers that were, quite personable in that. So it was a bit of a change when he first came to Celtic. But fingers crossed that if Rodgers is able to develop him, because if he can make him an even better player, then, like I say, it's going to be a scary prospect.
One thing I would say as well is that Celtic don't allow that media to go out unless they want it to go out.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think they want to relay that information to the supporters that this is a very different sort of regime that's in charge now. I think you're going to see a lot of players that maybe did even play well under Postecoglou play even better and get to a higher level. There's no doubt that Postecoglou was a good manager, but when you put the two together, and this isn't recency bias or anything, I would say that Brendan Rodgers is a better manager. He's done it down south. Postecoglou is yet to prove that he can do it down south. I mean, if Postecoglou was to get an FA Cup, it's Spurs, there'll probably be a statue outside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So it's one of those ones, but he'll have to prove himself down south. I don't want to talk about Postecoglou too much.
No, of course not. Just because we're talking about it because it's related to what Matt O'Reilly said.
Yeah. Brendan Rodgers is a very different manager. I think Matt O'Reilly. You look at the players that Brendan Rodgers has improved in the past with regards to an attacking midfielder. Even at Leicester, with James Maddison, he become the £40 million player under Brendan Rodgers. You look beforehand at players like Coutinho, and then at Celtic you have Stuart Armstrong and Tom Rogic. That seems to be speciality midfielders and wingers. Those are the two positions that seem to really, really improve under a Brendan Rodgers managed side. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how players in those positions in turn improve. I think Matt O'Reilly has absolutely everything in his locker. If he was a wee bit faster, I don't even think he would be at Celtic. I think just his gangly nature and the way he goes about, he maybe needs to work a wee bit harder at some of the other stuff to get better at other things. But I think he's got everything in his locker to do well next season. And it's a very much a watch this space with Matt O'Reilly. I'm really excited to see what he can do under Brendan Rodgers next season.
Yeah, definitely. That's something else to keep an eye on, and hopefully maybe we'll see a wee bit of evidence of that in pre-season if he's sort of improved a bit on certain things. But I think we'll leave it there for today, guys. Thanks very much for joining us. Once again, if anybody that's interested, the ticker tape down below. You can subscribe to the website, supporting top quality journalism for the club you all love. You can go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Ryan, thanks very much for joining us, mate. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good day, everybody.
Tony and I will be back tomorrow, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.